Actually, today we're actually going to start learning. Until the first three classes were all introductions, right? They're all introductions to the Talmud. And today we're actually going to learn a page of the Talmud. In Yiddish, they say, Lomer lernen a blat Gemara. Let's learn a page of Gemara. If you remember what was a blot is a double-sided folio of the Talmud. So the Talmud is a big book, right? Every page is a blot. Every blot Gemara it has two sides to it. So remember we said every page of the Gemara has a number, and it's a number to identify that page of the Talmud. And there are many tractates. Every tractate has a name, and the tractates belong to different groupings. We learned about that too as well. So we had a lot of introductions telling us a different thing. So we're going to look to the page of the Talmud and try to understand a little bit better. And we're going to start the Talmud right from the very beginning, from the first page of the Talmud. So I'm just going to hand that over here, a few copies, and I'm going to open up soon the screen share. So those who don't have the emails or whatever are going to. Everyone have one copy? I'm going to start with the Gemara. Yeah. The first page of the Talmud is Masechet Brachot. Brachot is blessings. We start off with blessings. So I'm just going to share the screen for those that are on the line over there. Let's see if we can find the screen over here. Okay. Give me a second. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Try to make it as large as possible. There's one person, unmute yourself and tell me that you can see it.
It's good.
Okay. You see, that's the top of the page of the Talmud. Before we get to talking about the Talmud, we'll see how much you remember from last week. So just a little question over here to everybody. Which tractate are we reading? If you could give a look at the page, you might be able to find the name of the tractate. The name of the tractate is Brachot. Brachot is the first tractate of the entire Talmud. Remember we said there are 6 orders of the Mishnah, 6 orders of the Talmud. And the first tractate of the order of Zra'im, of planting, is agricultural laws, is brachot. And that's pretty obvious because, before you eat, you have to make blessings. You make blessings on the fruit from the tree and the fruit from the ground and the vegetables. We make brachos on everything we eat. We also make a lot of brachos, a lot of blessings we make also during prayer. So somehow they connected prayer with the agricultural section. It's sort of an anomaly. It's a little bit the one tractate is a little bit out, but because there are many sections here about blessings we make on food, which has to do to agricultural laws, so it falls into the tractate into the order of agricultural laws. But the name of the Masechta, we see over here is Brachot. What's the name of the chapter, anybody? Which chapter? What number chapter is it? First chapter. Okay, what's the name of the chapter? You see, right now, where do we find all these answers that I said? All these answers we find where? At the top, the top page. And what page is this? The top of the page. What page is it? Page Bet. You see in the top left-hand side, You see a big bet over there? That we start in page bet. We start in page. We start in page 2, because the reason why we start page 2, because as Jews we know that we never even started learning. We only start from page 2. Nobody gets to page 1 ever, right? We're always starting again and again. So some say that the Aleph is the cover page, which we learned last week too. We looked at the cover page of every page, and the Talmud has what's known as it's called the Sharblat, because it has a colorful gate. So it's called the Sharblat. A blat Gemara is a page of Gemara, right? In Hebrew, blat is daf. Daf. So sometimes I'll say daf aleph, daf beis, daf gimel, daf daled, daf hey, daf vav, right? It keeps on going that way. And then you could have daf beis, amud aleph. Right? Or amud beis, because there's always 2 sides to every page. Okay, what else did we have on the page of the Talmud? Just to recall what we learned if we want to find out where there is a pasuk, a verse that's being quoted in the Talmud, where will we find it? Anyone? Footnotes. It's footnotes, right. But which one is the footnotes for the Torah? For the 5 books of Moses? Yeah. No. Try again. Yeah, that one there, right. Yeah. He's looking at the right one, right? So the one, it's like in the middle. You see where it says, right? If you look where it says Me'emasai, the big Me'emasai in the middle, the big box. You see the big box? So right on top of the box, to the right-hand side, is a thing called Torah Or. That's the name of that column. So if you look at the column and you go down a bit, let's say, so let's say we go down over here. So you'll see in that column there are footnotes. Dvarim Zayin Reishis Aleph. You see, that's a footnotes for verses in the Torah. If you want to find footnotes for other parallel sections of the Shas of the Talmud, that's on the right hand side. You see on top over there, Mesoris Hashas. All along that side over there, you'll see other quotes to different parts of the Talmud. And then finally we have on the left-hand side, we have there's footnotes which tie in the Gemara and the Talmud with halacha. And that is on the far left side. It's called Ayin Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. You can see that on top of the page. Those are the footnotes. You'll see Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, right? On the left side, far left side on the top. All right. So those are footnotes which just send you off to the Jewish law, where the final law is codified. Remember, we spoke about codifiers like a Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, the Tur, all the places where we could find the final verdict in Jewish law. Now, if you remember in a previous class, we spoke about that there was a whole process here that we started from Moses at Sinai, and then we went for many generations of the oral tradition. And Moses passed down the laws to the people, right? And for another 1,200 years, it wasn't written down until Rabbi Yehuda the Prince came 1,200 years later, 120 years after the second temple was destroyed. And he says, even though the tradition is that you're not allowed to record these things, we better record it because the Jews are going in exile. It's all going to get lost. We have to start recording it. And that's when they started recording what was known as the Mishnah. And a few hundred years go by, and then they record something called Gemara. The Gemara is a super commentary on the Mishnah. The Mishnah was written in the year 120. The Gemara was written a few hundred years later, and that is the explanations of everything that's written in the Mishnah. So if you recall, Mishnah plus Gemara equals Talmud. So today we're going to learn a Blat Gemara. We're going to learn a page of the Talmud. We're going to learn Mishnah and Gemara, and we'll see how they interface with each other.
Can we learn it in memory of Aryeh?
Huh? Like?
Kid that was killed.
Yeah, what's his name? No?
Aryeh Shelep. Yeah,
okay.
Dedicated to him.
Yeah, well, you'll dedicate it to the young boy that was murdered, and cold blood on his way to studying Torah. Yeah,
Shekopek.
Shikopek, yes. In his honor, 60-year-old boy that was murdered today. Yeah, we're going to learn in his honor. We're going to learn his honor. Yeah, yeah.
And he was killed because he was in Jew.
And the second one from the Shiva. Last year there was another one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyways, so let's focus on the Gemara now. We could talk a lot about what's going on in Israel, but we will study in his honor. That's
The
for
Gemara
sure.
is a super commentary.
Yeah, the Gemara is a super commentary on the Mishnah. So if you give a look on your page, you will see, for instance, this is the first page of the Talmud. So the first 10 lines is a Mishnah. And then you'll see in the middle of the page, suddenly there's a big Gimel and Mem. So when I say the page, I'm speaking about the island right in the middle.
Okay.
The island right in the middle, that's the Mishnah and the Gemara. On the side, you have commentaries like Rashi and Tosfos. They're commentaries from 1,000 years later, after that, right? After the Mishnah is written. So Rashi lived in the year 1082 or whatever, and Tosfos is maybe in the 1100s, 1200s, so that's a span of time. So you guys are online, can you all see what I'm showing you over here today? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to stop share for a moment. I'm going to come back to this. Okay, you guys were able to watch. Did a lot of you get the email I sent out today? Yeah, you received it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, those that didn't get can sign up online, and next week I'll send it to you. But this page of the Talmud that we're starting with today, as we said, is the first page of the entire Talmud. It's maybe close to 3,000 pages like this in the Talmud.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a Talmudic scholar, you go through all the 3,000 pages. Not too many people that I know went through. Sometimes there are some people that study the Talmud for over a period of 7 years. Every day they do a page. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how many pages there are. So it's 7 times 365, So it's about somewhere around what I was saying.
When someone is studying, like we just
said, a blood Gemara.
Yeah. So does he have to also study the Rashi?
Okay. Yeah. Well, you could study the Talmud just reading the Talmud itself, but you'd have a very hard time. Rashi is like it fills in the spaces. The Mishnah and the Gemara is written almost like the Torah scroll, without vowels and without any punctuation. So you have to figure out when something is a question, something is an answer, right? There's no punctuation or anything, right? So it's written in a very old style, and it's like a puzzle almost. Every page of the Talmud is a puzzle. And the only way you get through it is by using the aids of Rashi and Tosfos, and they help you get through it. So typically in yeshivas, over the years where they study Gemara, they don't learn Gemara alone. They learn the Gemara with Rashi side by side. Mm-hmm. So Rashi is like a commentary that if you're a good Torah scholar and you could read obviously the Gemara and the Rashi, right? So you read a little bit, a few lines of the Gemara, a few lines of the Mishnah, and you go straight to the Rashi. What's going on over here? If you're really brilliant, you can figure it out. If you have a lot of experience and how Gemara works, you'll know it without reading the Rashi commentary. But most people need the Rashi commentary. Today, they have other commentaries, like they have Art Scroll, they have Steinsaltz, they have in English, they have a lot of commentaries today that if you translate. The translation here, the one I have here, is the old Sensino translation, which I have here in English. So you could use that as well. But it's really magical to be able to study the same page, actually, the same layout that they studied for the last 300 years 250 years. This was the layout, so it's very special and people memorize this layout, so it's almost like a Torah scroll. It's a particular setup. There are books that have just the Gemara itself. There's one very, very good. So some great resources if you want to learn Talmud is obviously the Art Scroll. They have a great think tank that put together all the commentaries on it together, and it's very, very helpful. Or you could look the Steinsaltz Gemara. It's also great. Steinsaltz's Gemara was done single-handedly by one person named Steinsaltz. That's an incredible thing. And there are also online. There is a site called Safaria, which has many, many Jewish books translated. It's a great site for academics, and you can go on it. So Safaria, and it has a few lines of the Talmud in Hebrew, and then in English. So it's almost like it takes you through it. It's very good. They did a very good job. So there are many, many many good resources which I didn't have when I grew up. I had to knock my head myself and figure it out. Today there's a lot more aids, Yeah. He did it. Yeah. I mean, to get all the vowels right, you just have to know the Hebrew and Aramaic well. So that's But there is a tradition as what the vowels are. Because if you go to yeshiva for many years, that's the way they read it. I mean, sometimes he differs a bit from the way I grew up, reading it. But there are some phrases, common phrases that are studied by heart by Talmudic scholars, and that's how you know what the vowels are. But so we're going to start now the first section over here, which is a very important section. It starts with the mitzvah of saying Shema. We all know that the most popular line of the entire Torah that every Jewish person knows. They wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep, you say the Shema. People say the Shema when they pass away. They say the Shema. They're saying the Shema when they're in trouble. People say the Shema Yisrael. We had somebody in our synagogue, a kid. He's like a older teenager, and he went with some kids hiking somewhere up north in some marsh. It was like swampland, and it was really bad news. And they were starting to sink in this. It's a kid from our shul, great kid. not religious kid, but he grew up in our shul, and so he's like really big. He's like almost like 6 feet tall, just a strong guy. He tells the whole group. He says, "Okay, guys, we're in trouble. We got to pray." So he says to everybody, he says, "Look, whether you're a Jew or a non-Jew alike, we're all going to say this prayer now. It's called the Shema." Everybody put your right hand on your eyes. Yeah, that's right. And everyone put your right hand on your eyes, and we're all going to say the Shema together. Shema Yisrael. In the middle of nowhere, somewhere up in the boonies in the northern, I don't know where they were. The hike. They go these long hikes. They go canoe trips or wherever they go. Huh? Yeah, it's the far corners of the earth. But a Jewish kid, no matter where he is, he always knows. He has to say the Shema. So Shema is a central prayer of the Jewish people. Huh? No atheists in the foxhole. That's right. So, yeah, like the story of the Jewish actor Max, who was looking. He was looking for a job. Couldn't find the job. He said, "I can't hear you, Kathy. If you're saying something, you have to unmute yourself." Is Kathy saying something?
No, sorry.
Looked like you were moving your lips.
Yes, we actually have Esther Itzik on the phone because she couldn't log in online.
Oh, why can't you log in?
I don't know. I have a problem.
No worries.
I'm hearing every word. I have the visual. Thanks to Kathy.
Okay. So
It's
you're good.
working.
I'm here.
Okay, welcome, Esther.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shema Yisrael, as we know, is the motto of the Jewish people. So it's nice that the Talmud, the Gemara, starts with Shema, with the mitzvah of saying Shema. We all know that, and this is the unfolding of the Talmud. You have to understand the structure here. So we have a verse in the Torah. The Torah says there's a mitzvah to say Shema. Where do we see the mitzvah of the Torah? It starts from a pasuk. The pasuk says, it says, "V'hayu advarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzav v'chayim." You shall take these words, the words of the Shema, right? Teach it to your children, and you shall say it b'shachbacha when you go to sleep, u'v'kumecha when you get up. So that's how we know that you're supposed to say Shema in the morning prayers, and also before you go to sleep. We say it in Ma'ariv, some say it also by when they for the Kriyat Shema before they go to sleep, right? So we know there's a mitzvah in the Torah to say the Shema in the morning and in the evening, and this Mishnah starts off instead of the way the Talmud works. Sometimes it starts off like in the middle. It doesn't give any introduction. Doesn't say anything. First thing is Me'ei Masai. The first word, as you see, is Me'ei Masai. What does the word Me'ei Masai mean? From when? Me'ei Masai means from when. When can you start saying Shema at night? So if you look in the English, you could see it also, right? You can look. Why don't you? Those that are here can take the two papers, rip it apart. They have the two pages, the Hebrew and the English. I'm gonna show you the English momentarily. So right away, we need to understand the verse. The Torah says, "Say the Shema when you're going to sleep and when you wake up." But when is that time exactly? Right? When is that time? So in one Mishnah, he queries when do we say Shema in the evening? And another Mishnah, which is a few pages later, the Mishnah will, after the Gemara gets to work on it for a few pages, you have Gemara, it goes to speak about the Shema of the morning. But he starts off with the evening Shema. So let's go back to the share screen over here for those that are online over here. Okay, here we go. Okay, tell me that you can see it, please. Somebody say yes.
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 Okay, good.
Can you make it a little bigger, Rabbi?
As big as you like.
If
Like
you
that?
can.
Is that
Oh,
good?
it's better. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
we have over here, remember the middle island, that's the Mishnah, right? The middle island is the Mishnah. And underneath that, about 10 lines down, you see the Gimel Mem, that's Gemara. And then the Gemara goes on now after that for another 5 blocks or something, right? Till it gets to the next Mishnah, because there's a lot to say about every Mishnah, the Gemara, right? So for 200-300 years, the rabbis were asking questions. Now, Mishnah is written more in a halachic format, laws. I mean, ask questions, answers, but it's more concise. The Gemara, you'll get a good idea of what Gemara is. That's why I'm giving you an example to get an idea what happens in the Gemara. In the Gemara, it asks where, what, why, who, when, what's going on, right? That's the Jewish way, right? Asking a lot of questions, right? And trying to figure out what are we talking about. Right? So, but first the Mishnah asks, Masai, Shema ba'arvin. When do we start reading the Shema in the evening? So the question is, because the Torah says you should read the Shema at night, we need to know a little bit more about it. Now, remember, what is the oral tradition? What is the Mishnah? The Mishnah is the 5 pillars of the Mishnah. Right? You have the first pillar of the Mishnah is what's the oral tradition? What did Moses get at Sinai? Right? That was the first one of the pillars. The second pillar was, what else did Moses get at Sinai? Measurements, things, different things, sizes, times, other traditions, besides translation of things which are written in the Torah. Then the third thing is the logic, the logical thing. The Torah gave us 13 principles how we can understand the Torah. So the Torah, you have to understand what the Torah says, right? Use your mind. Try to compare one thing to another to extrapolate, to figure things out, right? That's the third principle of the Mishnah. The fourth principle of the Mishnah was rabbinical fences that they created, right? The laws, in order to protect the Torah, there were numerous fences that they put into place. Like we gave an example of Muktzah and Shabbos to protect Shabbos, right? Different things that we have laws, protections. And then we have rabbinical establishments. So I'm going to go through the Mishnah. You're going to tell me which pillar is this Mishnah. And okay, it's a good question. So now you'll have a little bit what to look for. Let me know. What do you think is this Mishnah? Which part of the 5 pillars of Mishnah is it? Okay, let's see what's saying. So first he asks, when do we read the Shema in the evening? Okay, so I'll show you a little bit also the English over here, but you can look at the English as well. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Here we have some English here. Yeah. Okay, you see it on the left side, the left column. It says, "From what time may one recite the Shema in the evening?" Right. So I'm just going to continue in the English a little bit, and I'll go back to the Hebrew. It says, "From the time that the priests enter their houses in order to eat their truma, until the end of the first watch." These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. We're going to read that now back in the Hebrew. We go back to the Hebrew here, guys. It says in the second line, Misha, from the time, Shakohanim, that the Kohanim nichnasim lechel b'trumasim, that the Kohanim go to eat their truma. When was that? When did the Kohanim used to go eat their truma? So it was when sometimes you had a Kohen that became ritually impure. Right? So they were ritually impure. They had to go to the mikveh, and they had to wait till the next nightfall. And then they were allowed to eat, because you're not allowed to eat truma. Truma is the special holy food that Israelites used to take a part of their grain, and they would give it to the Kohen to eat. That's how the Kohanim would survive. But that food was considered holy, in the sense that if they touched a dead body, or they touched something, or they touched a dead creepy crawly thing, or if they became tameh, they became impure, they had to wait. They had to go to the mikveh, and it says and then they became pure after sunset. And we know the time that they went to eat the truma was nightfall. Right. So when is it? It's really when the stars come out. It's called Tzeit HaKachavim. That is the time that the Kohen go to eat truma. So later in the Gemara it asks, why does it have to say time the Kohen go to eat the truma? Why not just say from nightfall? That would be much easier. So the Gemara later asks that question, right? That's the Gemara. The Gemara comes and says, why does it have to tell us in such a roundabout way from the time the Kohen go to eat the truma, like all the way around and around? And then you ask, when is that time? The time is nightfall. So the Gemara later says that he's trying to teach us another law. He's trying to teach us the law. The Gemara is telling us the law about nightfall here, that you could start reading Shema. He also wants to tell us that that's the time that the Kohanim can start eating truma. That's later in the Gemara. So when is the time? The Torah says, when you go to sleep, that's when you read the evening Shema. So the question is, when is that time? So the first opinion is in this Mishnah. In this Mishnah, we're going to have 3 opinions. And we're going to see later what they're really arguing, but there's an argument over here. Right away, you have the rabbis, you have 3 rabbis, you have 3 opinions. Right? So the first rabbi is divided Rabbi Eliezer. What did Rabbi Eliezer say? That the time to read the Shema in the evening is from nightfall until the end of the first watch of the night. What's the first watch of the night? We know there are 3 watches of the night. There are 3 segments of the night. The night is broken up into 3 parts. Each one is called a watch. And it has to do with many laws of the Torah, but regardless, let's say the night goes from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m., let's say, that's the night. So if you divide it into 12 hours, say, and you divide it into to 3 watches, so how long is every watch? 4 hours. So the end of the first watch would be, let's say, 10 o'clock. So from 6, if nightfall is 6 o'clock, and the end of the first watch is 10 o'clock, so it's from 6 to 10. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, that you can start saying the Shema at that time, at the nightfall, from nightfall until the end of the first watch, which is 1/3 of the night, which is right around 10 o'clock. So there are basically different parts of the night. The first part of the night is when night begins, the start of night. Then you have the middle of the night, it's from 10 to 2. And then you have 2 to 6 is the final watch of the night, which is already you're starting to move towards the morning already.
So midnight is not midnight.
Yeah, midnight is midnight.
It's not the middle of the night.
No, midnight is the halfway of the middle watch. Is midnight.
Halfway of the middle at 6
No,
hours.
not 12 o'clock. Chatzot is not 12 o'clock necessarily.
No, it moves around a little bit, but we're saying, and I'm just picking average times.
Yeah.
There are calculations exactly how to work it out, but just for our purpose tonight, we're just going to say, let's say the night is from 6 to 6, and midnight is 12, and the end of the first watch is 10 p.m., and the end of the second watch is 2 p.m., the end of the third watch, 2 a.m., and the end of the third watch is 6 a.m., right? And midnight is 12 a.m. Yeah, fine. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. But the way Mishnah works and Gemara works, nothing is ever so simple. This is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. The Chachamim, but the sages said, who were probably a majority, and therefore we would follow usually majority rule. That's the way it is. How do we know that the Chachamim, there are sages, many sages, right? The Chachamim came and said, like this was like the crew. The Chacham, the wise men, right? Like Chacham. What does the Chacham say? So the sages said, Ad Chatzos, that you could read the Shema until Chatzos. Now you see over there's a little base on top of Ad Chatzos, so that gives you a clue that maybe that's the rule, right? Because you see the base it's sending you off to the code of Jewish law, right? On top of the word Ad Chatzos, you see a little base. And the base goes there to the top, right? And the base, the halacha is like that, right? Usually, whoever has that letter, that's what the halacha is like.
That's what they settled it.
Right. And then, hold on, we're not finished. Then there's a third opinion. Rabbi Gamliel says, I'm going to look at just again in the English a little bit, just to give you a little bit of the English over here, you see? Let's see it again. These are the words that Rabbi Eliezer, the sages say, until midnight. And Rabbi Gamliel says, until the dawn comes up. So now we have the halach is also like Rabbi Gamliel. You try to figure out later on, how could it be like both? But we'll see. The Mishnah itself will tell you why the halacha is like both. Okay? But before we get to that, let's try to understand over here. We make believe we are Talmudic scholars. Talmudic scholars, we're trying to understand a verse of the Torah. And remember, the third principle of the third pillar is use your brain, right? Extrapolation, kal v'chomer, work out one thing from another, right? Try to understand what the Torah says. So what does the Torah say? The Torah says you say the Shema when you go to sleep. Okay, so why would one rabbi say till 10 o'clock? And the other is maybe he's an early bird, right? But second rabbi, the rabbis said until midnight. And the Rabbi Gamliel says, all the way, he was like a night owl. He's like a partier, right? He's like, you read it a little later than sons. But it's interesting. So let's think a little bit for a moment. Let's use our mind. Let's use our brains. Let's try to understand. Try to be like Talmudic scholars. What's going on over here? So we could, if we just sort of try to understand the verse says you say the Shema when you go to sleep, right? When you go to sleep. But question is, does the Torah mean when you're actually going to sleep, the time you go to sleep? Or maybe the Torah means sleep time. Going to sleep time, or is it sleep time? So if I say going to sleep time, then the Rabbi Lezer makes sense, right? In the olden days, by the way, there was no electricity. So there's no TV, there was no nothing like that. People went to sleep if it got dark, you had nothing to do. There was no light, you had a little lamp, maybe it lasted an hour or two, right? You went to sleep. If 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you went to sleep because you wanted to get up bright and early so you can get the first light in the morning so you could do whatever you had to do, right? So you could understand the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, the Torah says you say the Shema in the first watch of the night. That's time people go to sleep, is the first watch of the night, right? First third of the night, that's the time of going to sleep. But that's if you interpret the verse as the Torah says, b'shachbacha, when you go to sleep. But you could also translate it, b'shachbacha, when you're lying down, time of sleep. Right. So if you say the whole time of sleep, then it would be Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel says, say till daybreak, till you wake up. Any time within the time of sleeping that's the appropriate time. So that seems to be the foundation of the argument, which makes sense. That should be that's just a very simple question I'm interpreting, right? The verse. But at the same time, so we need to ask ourselves the question: Is this they're arguing as to what the oral tradition was? Right? Was there an oral tradition where the Torah says, "And you shall go to sleep when you go to sleep"? Was there actually an oral tradition that said from 6 to 10, or until the morning, right? Or are they just trying to understand it themselves and they're coming up with the logic? The Gemara, the Mishnah doesn't get into that, but it could be one or the other. It could be one of them had a tradition in their family that went back all the way, right? And then in their family, they always said Shema up until 10 o'clock. And Rabbi Gamliel's family, Rabbi Gamliel was like he was the prince. Rabbi Gamliel's family was from the Davidic lineage. So in his family, they would say Shema all the ways until the morning. But we have to understand the Chachamim, they say till Chatzos. Why would they say? Would they say Chatzos? So let's read a little bit further, and we'll get a little bit more of an idea. And then we'll get the full picture of how the halacha sort of develops and how it's resolved. Okay, so this is an important mitzvah, saying Shema at night. When do we say the Shema at night? Rabbi Gamliel says until dawn comes up. Once it happens, are you following with me in the English, everybody online? Yeah? We'll go back and forth to the Hebrew because, what would you prefer, Hebrew or English? Anybody have a preference here?
English.
We'll do the English? Okay, we'll do English. But when you go to yeshiva, you have to start doing it in the Hebrew. Remember that. Okay? Okay, look, anyways, we'll figure it out. Okay, so right now we're learning this in honor of that young boy because he's a yeshiva boy, right? And he would be learning this piece. So this is like the first piece you learn when you start the Talmud. So once it happened that his sons came home late from wedding feast. So they're telling now a story. Now, by the way, stories are very important. The stories sort of tell you what the traditions were and how people conduct themselves. So the very first Mishnah already, he's introducing the concept of story. There is a concept, there is a very important thing in Talmudic law. It's called Ma'aser Rav. What happened in the rabbis' homes? How did the people do things? That's a very, very important thing. Many times they ask, what is the Jewish law? They say, check what the people on the street are doing. You'll know what the law is. That's the way we know what you're supposed to be doing. So he says like this: once it happened that his sons came home late from a wedding feast. They were partying all night. the sons of Rabbi Gamliel. It was a king's home. It was nobility, noble home, and they were up a whole night at a simcha, wedding feast. And they said to him when they got home, I guess he was up when they came home. Huh? He probably was, yeah. No, because he knows he could say Shema till the morning, right? So maybe he was like worried about them. They were driving. You know what I mean? Walking, right. So he was really worried. So he was up till early in the morning, yeah. And they said to him, it was already after midnight. Said, we have not yet recited the evening Shema. He said to them, if the dawn has not yet come up, you are still bound to recite.
Not giving them a break.
Yeah.
Still got to daven.
Still got to daven. Still got to say the Shema. It means if dawn hasn't come out, dawn is a period just before sunrise, right? Dawn is when you can see already a little bit the sunshine coming in the sun. It's shining on the sky, but you don't actually see the body of the sun yet. That's dawn. Dawn is when the sun hasn't come yet around the globe, but already there's a first light that's coming forth. That's dawn. So if you see no light in the sky, you still have to say the Shema. So it could be like his kids asked him, "What are you talking about? We know the Chachamim, the sages said until midnight. So like, what are you like? How are you coming to say this? You know, there was already a debate between Rabbi Eliezer, who's a great scholar, Rabbi Eliezer, many other sections in the Talmud, where Rabbi Eliezer takes on the sages. Right? If I'm not mistaken, there's another place we have to know that one of the greatest laws of the Torah is majority rules. In Parshas Mishpatim, you follow majority, and that, remember, we said the whole Shulchan Aruch, the whole code of Jewish law, it works on a majority of the opinions. So that's very, very important. So there's places. Remember, we showed there's some places where Rabbi Eliezer argues with the sages, and he does miracles to prove that he's right, but they say to him, "Sorry, the Torah says majority rules, so we go according to the majority." So Rabbi Eliezer was fighting with the sages. He said until 10 o'clock, and they said until midnight. Right? And there was that big debate. Everybody knew about it. So when his sons came late after the party, they came home to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer tells him, "You have all the way until," he said, "Dad, we want to go to sleep. Let us go to sleep." And he says, "What do you mean go to sleep? You have to say the Shema." He said, we heard about this big debate. And the Chachamim said, at midnight. So the latest opinion is midnight. So we don't have to say it anymore. It's too late. So let us go to sleep. So Rabbi Eliezer went to the bedroom door and he locked the door, slammed the door shut, said, "You can't go. Shema. Let's go, guys. You got to say the Shema." So they said, "Well, what about the Chachamim? What about all the other opinions?" So he said, "No." So he explained to them. He said to them, if dawn has not yet come up, you're still bound to recite. And not in respect to this alone did they so decide. But wherever the sages say until midnight, the precept may be performed until dawn comes up. Oh. He says that the truth is, wherever the sages say until midnight, they're just trying to put in some kind of a safety clause.
Like a fence?
Yeah, right. So here we see a fence concept there. Right. That they say until midnight because they know people will fall asleep and they'll say, I'll do it later. No. You have to make sure to do it before midnight. So it says, and not in respect to this alone do they so decide. Wherever the sages said until midnight, the precept may be performed until the dawn comes up. And he gives a few examples of other mitzvot where the mitzvah is, we are told you have to finish by midnight. But Rabbi Gamliel says you should know that those mitzvahs as well, where they tell you to stop at midnight, really you're allowed to do it until the morning. Where do we all know something that you're supposed to do until midnight? Say that, right? And we do all the way until the morning, right? But over there it's different. You still have to eat the afikoman before midnight. Over there it's specific because the Torah says that this is not a rabbinic law. Yeah.
I have to go to sleep or okay, something else to come on.
Right. But over there, the Torah clearly says by the Paschal lamb, the Torah says you shall finish eating the Paschal lamb by midnight.
Yeah.
So that's a clear thing. Over here is not a clear thing in the Torah. The Torah says when you go to sleep. So the sages came and now they try to give a time line to it. So we say wherever the sages say until midnight, the precept may be performed until the dawn comes. So he gives an example: the precept of burning the fat and the sacrificial pieces too. Every day in the temple, there were a lot of sacrifices brought. So one of the mitzvahs of the sacrifice is you're supposed to take the parts that you don't eat, all the fat and the sacrificial pieces. They have to be burnt before midnight. Yeah, go ahead. Maybe performed until, but the truth of the matter is that too may be performed till the dawn comes up. So Rabbi Gamliel says the mitzvah of burning all the sacrifices, which we are told finish up by midnight, right? They couldn't burn it all. There was a lot of sacrifice. They couldn't burn all the sacrifices during the day, so they were allowed to do it until midnight. But he says, truth of the matter is they're allowed to do it until dawn. Similarly, all the offerings that are as written, and thou shalt recite them. One second. No, it goes down further. I'm sorry. What's going on over here? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, here we go. The piece of similarly, all the offerings that are be eaten within one day may be lawfully be consumed till the coming up of the dawn. Why then did the sages say until midnight? So why do we say until midnight? In order to keep a man from transgression, in order that people shouldn't fall asleep and forget. Oh, so now you know why there is a little letter on both the Chachamim and the Rabbi Gamliel, because the halacha is like both. The halacha is that you should preferably say the Shema before midnight, because otherwise you might fall asleep and forget it. But if you forgot for whatever reason, you came home late at night, you're allowed to say the Shema all the way until.
Does the Shema have to be the last thing you do at night?
Yeah. Well, there's really by the way, the Shema that we're speaking about over here is the Shema of Ma'ariv. So there's a Shema of Shachris and the Shema of Ma'ariv. We also have a custom, in addition to saying the Shema of Ma'ariv, we also say the Shema of going to sleep. Now we're going to look now just momentarily. I want you to get a little feel for Mishnah, and then what Gemara does, but also what Rashi does and what Tosfos does, and what the debates are that go on. So I'm going to show you a little bit here shortly, a little back and forth from Rashi and Tosfos. So we're going to look inside.
Rabbi?
Commentaries on both sides. Just give me a second, huh?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, I mean, excuse my expression, but can you mix and match, or do you have to be consistent, either before 10, midnight, or dawn? Can you, depending upon how your evening is, or do you have to be consistent every night before 10, or you can do 10 or 12?
Brian. Yeah, so Brian, the thing is like this. You're asking a very, very good question. And this is what we have. We have a halachic process. And here it mentions the three opinions. Now, generally, the halacha goes according to majority rule. So if you're presented with a Mishnah where there are single opinions, which is important to know what the single opinions are, as we'll show you later on why does he record the opinions that the halacha is not like. Because it's important to know other opinions, because there are extenuating circumstances we can sometimes follow an individual opinion as opposed to a public opinion, as opposed to a majority opinion. It's like in courts, they record the minority opinions because it's important to know what the other opinions are. Because in some cases, someone is sick or someone is you can rely in extenuating circumstances or with a great financial loss, something like that. In halacha, there are times we turn to a minority opinion, but generally we follow majority opinion. So if you have a Mishnah like this, we are certain that the halacha will be like the Chachamim, the sages. You follow? Because the first opinion, Rabbi Eliezer, who says till 10 o'clock, he's a single guy. The last opinion, Rabbi Gamliel, he's also a single guy. The middle opinion is the sages. The sages said till midnight, so we know the halacha will be till midnight. But in halacha of this, so the halacha of this Mishnah, we know what the halacha is going to be like. However, in this particular Mishnah, since Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, the way he set up the Mishnah was that the first opinion, Rabbi Eliezer, was a singular opinion. But the latter opinion, Rabbi Gamliel, he says that Rabbi Gamliel explains that really the sages agreed to me. That really, in essence, they believe that you could say, if you're in trouble, you can say it till the morning. And they said until midnight because to keep us away from sin. So we shouldn't miss the Shema. So that is the halacha. The halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, even though generally we follow the Chachamim, because Rabbi Gamliel really explained the Chachamim. He explained that the sages were in agreement with him. And that's the way the halacha is. That's the way the halacha is codified. So how do we follow? Yes, we do follow in a singular way. Shulchan Aruch. There are certain rules and laws which the Gemara itself gives later on. And it says, how do we know what the final ruling on Jewish law is? So they have certain principles. Sometimes there is no majority rule, but we have certain principles of one rabbi against another rabbi. We follow this rabbi as opposed to that rabbi. So let's say Rabbi Akiva always had he was a winner. He always got. Halacha usually followed him. And numerous other famous sages. But that's when there's only single people. But when there's a majority rule, you follow the majority rule. So there are ways that we sort of come to a final ruling. So the Code of Jewish Laws. If you give a look on these two rabbis, you'll see there's a little footnote. The footnote goes to the Code of Jewish Law. Well, the Code of Jewish Law said we follow according to the majority rule, but we also follow Rabbi Gamliel, who gives a caveat and explains how really he's in line with the majority rule. And that's why the halacha is like him as well. Okay? Thank you for that very good question.
Can I have another question?
Yes.
So it means that between the Mishnah Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch, it's about 1,000 years.
Yes. Yes. Well, the Mishnah was written in around the year 120. The Gemara maybe was written around the year 500.
Okay.
Rashi and the Rambam were about the year 1200. Shulchan Aruch is around the year 1500.
Okay.
So how many years is that?
Yeah,
about 1,000 years. Yeah, about 1,000 years.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. More than 1,000 years, right? More than 1,000 years. To the Code of Jewish Law. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions about this whole thing. You can continue asking those questions to get a better idea, but I want you to have a full picture of how everything was developed. So here we learn the Mishnah. Because before I go to Rashi and Tosfos, I want to now show you a little bit Gemara. Okay? The Gemara, remember we said there was the next few hundred years in all the academies. They took the Mishnah. The Mishnah was now the authoritative book on the oral tradition and on Jewish tradition. Everything you're supposed to do. It was the accepted book. Now the Gemara comes and it starts to dissect this writing over here. Yeah. So let's first look just a little bit. Huh? No, the Mishnah is more like Mishnah is Hebrew, which was written in Israel. And the Gemara is Aramaic. Correct. So now you won't know anything that's going on.
Yeah.
The Aramaic is very similar. It's similar to Hebrew. It's not like real Aramaic. It's like Aramaic of the Gemara is more like it was a language. It was a Jewish language. It's like Yiddish.
Yeah.
It has a lot of like Hebrew words in it, and it's not German Yiddish.
Yeah.
Same way was the Aramaic that we're speaking about is not pure Aramaic. Yeah, it's like Ladino for Spanish, right? That was the Jewish sort of Judaized, but actually Aramaic is very similar to Hebrew. Okay, so we're going to look at where it says Gimel Mem, right in the middle of the page in the Hebrew. Let's go back just to the Hebrew a little bit. I'll do a little Hebrew, and then I'll shoot to the English, because so I'm going to read the Aramaic. So if you remember, the Gemara was written mostly in Babylon. There also was a Jerusalem version of the Talmud. What we're reading now is Babylonian Talmud. Babylonian is the Gemara. And for some people who don't know how to read it, it's like the Babylon. So it's Babylonian. So here we're going to read the Babylonian Gemara. So this is the first piece of Gemara that shows up. And it's a continuation of this discussion about the evening Shema. And remember, we tried ourselves to understand the debate between Rabbi Eliezer, the Chachamim, and Rabbi Gamliel. And now, based on what Rabbi Gamliel explained, the Chachamim really weren't really arguing with him. They also believed that it's all night long. So that means they understood it as being the time that people sleep, not the time that people go to sleep, but the time that people sleep, which is all the way until the morning, right? So why the Chachamim say until midnight? That's just a rabbinical fence. Because before I go to the Gemara, how many things how many pillars of Mishnah do we find in this Mishnah? Well, we see a fence, the fence that Rabbi Gamliel says the sages are just trying to keep us to 12 o'clock, right? What else do we see in this Mishnah?
Rabbinic majority ruling.
Majority ruling, right? What are the? How about logical understanding, right? Trying to understand the verses from a logical perspective, and perhaps some of this was also oral tradition. We're not sure. It doesn't say if it's oral tradition, but we know there's a lot of oral tradition that's locked into this. So many times when we learn Gemara and Mishnah, we're not sure which part is logic, which part is oral tradition. So, but we at the end we accept it all because it's halakha. So we accept it as the word of God. Now, how that word of God developed is not as important than that it becomes the word of God, because the Torah says majority rule, and we follow that majority. So then it becomes the word of God in that way as well. Okay. So now we're going to look at Gemara. You see the Gimel Mem in the middle? You see the Hebrew? I have to show you guys online. I forget. I always forget what I'm doing over here. I'll hang in there for a second. Here we go. Boom. I think I lost the Gemara here. That's what's going on. No, it's not it. Oh man. Okay, whatever. No, it's not that. We'll go there. Okay. Share. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. So now we have Gemara. You see it, guys? You can see it online?
No.
Huh?
No.
What's it?
No.
Uh-huh. Your screen sharing is paused.
What are the first two words? Is it ad sha'Allah?
What's that?
What's for the Gemara? Is it ad
sha'Allah?
sha'Allah?
Yeah, which one? No, you want to know where the Gemara begins?
Yeah.
If you give a look, there's two big letters in the middle of the page. Only two big letters. You can't miss it. It's like about 10 lines down from the top of the page. In the island, right? In the island, Island is the Mishnah of the Gemara, right? The last word is Kadei lahachik adam min ha'avera. Are you following what I'm saying? No? Okay, let me show it to you.
It's 14 lines down to be.
Yeah. Let me try to. What's that?
It's 14 lines down.
Right. Yeah.
See anything now? Let's see over. Okay, we'll try again.
14 lines down was helpful.
14 down the line? Yeah, okay, good.
14 lines down was very helpful.
Was it down? You counted it?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I counted.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's, can you just make it larger, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so here, you see what says the word Gemara right in the middle?
Do you have a cursor that you can you, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Maybe the cursor, yeah. So
Yeah.
let's see.
Like a pointer.
Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
Is that, can you see that means making a circle around it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Can you make it larger again?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, you see that?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you color code it?
What?
Can you
Maybe
make
for
it
next
in
week.
bold?
Give
You see
moment.
where it says Gemara? Everybody over
Yeah.
here sees what it says Gemara? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
So the
okay.
first question of the Gemara of the entire Talmud is, he asks, Tana Hechakai. Tana is, remember, the Mishnah. It's an important thing. We by the way, the Mishnah, remember, was for a few hundred years, and then the Gemara was a few hundred years after that. So the group of people that wrote the Mishnah were known as the Tanaim. Shammai, Hillel, Akiva, all those guys. Rabbi Huda the Prince was the last of the Tanaim. So that's called a Tana. Then you have another group, the group of the Gemara, they're known as Amoraim. Okay. So the first word that you have here, Tana. Tana is the master of the Mishnah. Tana, the master of the Mishnah, Heichakoi. Where's he up to? The Ketani Me'emasai, that he says Me'emasai. And this is an important question he's asking over here. He's asking, like, what's going on over here? We're starting the Talmud here. We're starting the Mishnah. And he's already asking us, where do we start saying the Shema? Like, nobody ever said we are saying the Shema. What? Like, when do we start saying the Shema? He's saying, no one's ever said anything about the Shema, that we're asking a question. Like, that's the Jewish way. Before you even start learning, you're already asking a question. The whole Talmud, the whole Mishnah starts with Me'emasai. When is this happening, right? What do you mean, when is it happening? So there was no statement made that you ask afterwards, when are we doing this? Right? Nobody said, let's say the Shema. If what it said, let's say the Shema, then you could ask, when do we say the Shema? This is the beginning of the book. You know, it's like the Torah would start, and instead of saying in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, right? So they would say, what day are we at? You know, what day was the world started? What do you mean? Tell us first the world was created, right? So here we have same thing. So the Gemara right away asks a question. An immediate question is like, why are we starting with a question here? Shouldn't there be a statement first? So that's what he asks. Tana Heichakoi, where is this Tana, the Ketani Me'emasai? That he says Me'emasai, that he's saying Me'emasai, from when on do we say the Shema? What are we talking about? The Su. You can tell I learned Gemara before. I know where all the questions are. The Su means, and another question is, that's Visu, and another question. My Shna, the Tani Ba'arv's Bereisha. Why does he start with learning about the night first, about the evening Shema, listening to Shachas Bereisha? He should have started off with the morning. Why start with the night thing, right? You start first, and first is the morning, and then you come to the night. So why doesn't he speak first about the morning? So it's two questions. The first question is, why are we starting off with a question about when do we start saying the Shema? The second question is, why do we start with the night Shema, not the morning Shema? Yeah, this is Shachas Bereishit. Question mark.
Well, the day starts in
Okay, you know already a little bit the answer. You cheated. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So this is what he says. So he says, you want to know what we're talking about? Over here, we're taking it for granted that before you start the Mishnah, you already learned the Torah, right? So the Tana, his job is not to teach you Torah. His job is to add things to what the Torah says already, or to give explanations of what the Torah says. So this is the answer that he says. It says, Tana akrochoi. The Tana is basing himself on a pasuk. And a pasuk is for granted that you know it already. Diksiv, as it says, right? The pasuk says, when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So since the whole Mishnah is based on a pasuk, so that's why he starts with a question. Zman krishma. Over here he starts talking about what is the time of Shema. So our job here in the Mishnah, basically, in the Talmud, in these generations, in the Mishnah, was to expound on that, expound on what's already in the Torah. So we take for granted that you know already the pasuk. What does the pasuk say? B'shach b'chav kumecha. Once we know that that's the order of the pasuk, which Shema comes first? When you go to sleep and when you wake up, right? So this pasuk will answer both questions. First question: why are we starting with a question mark about the timing? Because he assumes that you know that there's already a verse. What is the verse? Once we know it's that verse, then you understand already why we start with the evening Shema before the morning Shema, because that's the order of the verse. In our Mishnah, we learn Zman Kriya Shema, the time of the Shema. So we know already the mitzvah Shema from the Torah, and the mitzvah of the Torah is the night Shema before the morning Shema. So this is the way it goes. This is what he says: Zman Kriya Shema, the Shkeva Eimas. When is the time for the sleepy Shema? The time the Koyanim go to eat the Truma. So I'm just going to move to I'm reading you some of the Aramaic just to give you a little feel for it. But I'm going to go to the English because you guys like the English better. I see. You see what it says Gemara in the English, right? Okay. On what does the Tana base himself that he commences from what time? In other words, why are we starting with a question? Furthermore, why does he deal first with the evening Shema? Let him begin with the morning Shema. So he says, Tana bases himself on the scripture where, this is what I just read in the Hebrew, right? Where it is written, and thou shalt recite them when thou liest down, when thou risest up. It states the oral law thus. When does the time, see over here it says it calls it the oral law. When does the time of the recital, the Shema of lying down begin? The priests enter to eat the Truma. So that's one answer, one explanation as to why. So why do we discuss first the evening Shema before the day Shema? Because that's the order of the verse. Which verse? When you lie down, when you wake up. You guys can hear what I'm saying over there on the other side on the
yes.
Yes.
That's one answer. Another answer, and if you like, I can answer another answer. He learns the precedence of the evening from the account of the creation of the world, where is written, and there was an evening, it was a morning, one day. Right? We know that that's the way Hashem, at the very beginning of the Bereshit, it always says, and it was an evening, it was a morning. So that's why in the rest of the world they always count the day from the morning to the night. By Jews, we always start from nightfall. Another thing you could say about this argument of the opinion of the Chachamim, of the sages, is because that's when the day starts on the secular calendar. Right? starts at 12 a.m. So you can't.
That's the next day.
So we follow a little bit according to the sages, according to but nobody says that pshat. Nobody says that. But the truth is, I mean, the next day starts, from midnight actually, because another way of looking at it is maybe the sages said until midnight because midnight is the darkest point of the night, right? The sun is the farthest away. The sun starts to set at sunset. Let's say sunset. And it goes for another 6 hours. And then we're completely with no light at all. So that's when we need the Shema. We need the Shema up until that point to give us that's the night Shema. And then already after midnight, some people start to wake up already. And it says King David used to wake up already at midnight and say Tehillim. So the darkest moment is midnight, really. Right?
Rabbi, is there a rule on how long after you can say the morning Shema after the evening Shema? Like, what if you stay up all night and you decide to say it just before dawn, the evening one? How much can you do them back to back, or does there have to be a space?
You have to wait for the next class. You can't give me. I can't give you everything. That's the next Mishnah, which is about 5 pages later.
Okay, no, because I'm wondering if the night one determines when you can say the morning one.
Yeah, you could say back to back.
Oh, you can say that.
Yeah, because Shema. I mean, it's better to say the Shema after a little bit after dawn. But if you need to, you can already say the Shema, the morning Shema.
Yeah.
Right after dawn.
Oh,
you could technically say the evening Shema, the morning Shema, and then go to sleep after that.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're staying up a whole night, like if you're staying up for a Shavuot or something, all nighter.
Yeah.
So you could daven, you could say the Shema. Oh, I didn't say the Shema. You could say it right before dawn, and then after dawn, you could daven the morning Shema.
No, I was just thinking that they talked about the evening one first to help determine when you could say the morning one.
Yeah, but for men especially, there's a mitzvah to say Shema with tefillin in the morning, right? So tefillin you're not allowed to put on. It's a rabbinical law. You can't put on tefillin until you can't put it on after dawn. You have to wait till the earliest tefillin. You have to look it up. It's when already the sky is already becoming a little bit lighter, brighter. Yeah. It's not sunrise. Sunrise is just before sunrise. It's a period halfway between sunrise and dawn. But for that we're gonna have to learn some other classes about the morning Shema.
Because you can connect Mincha and Mariv.
Yeah, Mincha and Mariv you can connect, right?
Well, why can't you connect Mariv and Shachar?
It just doesn't work out that way, because the morning midah really preferably should be done after sunrise.
And the latest you can do the morning
after sunrise, but we do sunrise gets pretty late, especially here in Canada. So we rely on the other opinions to do it a little earlier. Okay, so now I gave you a little bit of flavor of the Gemara. So why does it say first the morning? Why does it say first the evening Shema before the morning Shema? Because it says b'shach b'chov kamecha, and also because it says vayi'erev vayivoker yom echad. So we always say evening before daytime. Okay, so this is just a little flavor of this. I'm just trying to give you a little flavor of Mishnah, of Gemara, and now I'm going to try to show you a little bit on this page, Rashi and Tosfos. Okay, we'll see if we can do that. So I'm not going to do all of Rashi, but Rashi, as we said, is a major commentary, explains everything. So it helps you read through the Mishnah and the Gemara. But if you look down in the I'm just going to show you over here. If you go down in the Rashi, see the Rashi on the right-hand side. So if you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down in the Rashi. Okay, you see that? You guys see where Rashi is? I'm showing it to you over here with my pointer. Imkain, see that? Right over here. Who sees it? You guys can see it on the.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, yeah, okay. So Rashi, remember this is not just Aramaic. This is Rashi is in Rashi script. It's a different font, right? So that the first one that's an aleph right over there. Right? See aleph doesn't look like an aleph, but that's aleph in Rashi script, right? Eight lines down. See it? Imkain. You guys figure that out? So,
It's Hebrew, though.
yeah, it's Hebrew. So he says, Imkain, if so, Lama Koyer Noisai, basic Knesses. Right. So you have to, the earliest he said you could say the Shema is at nightfall. So the Rashi asks a question. We see a lot of shuls daven Ma'ariv earlier. They daven Ma'ariv and they say Shema earlier, before nightfall. So he says, so this is what the Rashi is asking, a practical question. Imkain, Lama Koyer Noisei b'Beit HaKnesset. See it? If so, why do we read it in the Beit HaKnesset? Why we know that we daven Ma'ariv earlier. In some shuls they do it even an hour before sunset. They daven Ma'ariv. So we know that's okay. It's okay to daven Ma'ariv earlier, but Shema, we see Shema, which is part of Ma'ariv, you're not supposed to say before nightfall. So he says, why do we say the Shema? Why in basic Knesset do we say it earlier? Say the purpose is, why do we say the Shema? Maybe we should drop the Shema from the Amidah. We should drop the Shema from the Ma'ariv if we're saying it earlier, but we don't. He says no, because it's good to start davening with a little bit words from Torah. So you say the Shema, and then you say the Amidah by Ma'ariv, even though it's not yet the time for the Shema. But when are you going to fulfill the mitzvah of the Shema? So he says, Rashi says, it says, I'm going through this quickly. Rashi says, we have to repeat the Shema later on when it gets dark. Okay, so if you daven Ma'ariv earlier, people should say the Shema again when they get home. When it gets dark, they should say the Shema again, because they really haven't yet fulfilled the mitzvah of the Shema. They fulfilled the mitzvah of the Ma'ariv prayer of the evening service, but it's too early for the Shema, because as we say over here, Shema you have to say after the nightfall. And now this is what Rashi says over here. He says, we all know that everybody says Shema when they go to sleep. So that Shema, when they go to sleep, that is the mitzvah of the Shema. So you asked, why do we say Shema again if we said it already in Ma'ariv? He says, no, because it's too early in a lot of the shuls when they say the Shema earlier. So the second time we say the Shema is right before we go to sleep. So Rashi says, with that Shema, that even though many people just say the one paragraph of the Shema, they don't say the whole 3 paragraphs of the Shema. Rashi says you yaitza with the one paragraph. You say it earlier as part of Ma'ariv, even though it's before the allotted time for Shema. As we said over here, Shema is only after the time the Kohanim go to eat teruma, which is nightfall. So you have to say it again after nightfall. So you should say it when you get home again. So Rashi says, perfect. The Shema that we all say when we go to sleep, that Shema is the mitzvah of of saying Shema, because the Shema we said before was a little bit too early.
So the question is why are we saying it all day when we're just supposed to say it when we lie down and when we rise up? Why are we saying the Shema all through the day when the commandment is?
No, it's the time that we rise up, at the morning, and then in the evening we go to sleep. That's the way we understand. That's the oral tradition of it, right?
And yet it's the middle of the day.
Huh?
The middle of the day.
We don't say Shema.
That's how the Shema.
We don't by Mincha we don't say Shema. It's only by Shacharit and Ma'ariv, because it's B'Shach B'Kumecha. That's why. Now you know why we don't say it by Mincha. We don't say the Shema Mincha.
As night as opposed to when you're lying down.
Right, sort of.
And
Yeah.
Like day as opposed
Yeah,
to
day, like the daytime, right? But you can't really do it after. You'll see the time, the morning Shema. That's more specific. That has to be in the morning, not in the.
So what's the latest that you can do Shacharit?
Depends if you're at Chabad or not.
Well, that's the earliest.
That's for next year, because this one is about the evening, so it's a whole.
I won't be here next week.
Yeah. Next week we're going to do another piece, but we can do another time. We can discuss it a little bit more carefully. But I just want to show you, like, so Rashi comes in over here, and he asks a question on the Mishnah. That how's it possible if we're saying in the Mishnah that the earliest Shema is at nightfall? How can we say Shema earlier in Shul? So he says no. The Shema that we say earlier in Shul, that's just part of the prayer service. But the fulfillment of the mitzvah is really by the Shema that we say when we go to sleep. So then comes Tosfos on the other side. That's what I'm showing you. So the grandson Tosfos says, "What's going on? Since when is one paragraph of the Shema enough to fulfill the mitzvah of the Shema?" Rashi says that's why we say Shema before we go to sleep, is because that's the real performance of the mitzvah. What happened with the other paragraphs of the Shema? Right? What are we doing with that? And he asks other questions. I'm just trying to take you over here. Take you to the other side. So this is the Tosfos over here. So if you give a look over here on top of the page, the Tosfos, you see it over there, and then the top left-hand side, Amos Koidin, right? So you see over there, Pirush Rashi. You see that? He's starting off. He's starting up with the Zayd, Rashi, right? Pirush Rashi. So Rashi said, yeah, Rashi asked, how is it that we say the Shema early in the morning, and we don't wait for nightfall? Came Pirush Rashi. So Rashi therefore said, that the Shema that we say when we go to sleep, that's the main Shema. So he brings the whole thing. So then he goes through the whole thing. I'm not gonna. It's like a lot of Rashi script, but then he asks a few questions on his Zayda. So, but it's not understood. He says we know that we only read the custom is only when we go to sleep to read the first paragraph. What about the three paragraphs? Because the mitzvah of Shema, you're supposed to read three paragraphs of the Shema. And the other thing is, we know about the Krishma, you're supposed to read, the sages made a few blessings before the Shema and after the Shema, right? We say Marev Aravim, Avos Olam, we say a few blessings before the Shema, and then we have Goal Yisrael and Hashkivenu. The sages put those blessings before and after. So what happens with that? And furthermore, he says, we know that the Shema that we read at night before we go to sleep is really to protect us from the bad spirits. Mm-hmm. So it has nothing to do with the mitzvah of Shema. Some say that if the person is a holy man, he doesn't even need to say the Shema before he goes to sleep, because the bad spirits can't attack him. So what, he's not going to say the Shema if he's a sage? Yeah. So he goes on asking many questions, and at the end he says, no. Because Ma'ariv is allowed to daven earlier, so the Shema of the Ma'ariv also you're allowed to daven earlier. And we don't rely on the Shema before you go to sleep, but the Shema of the Ma'ariv actually is considered proper time. And he goes into the whole explanation, so why that's the proper time. I'm just trying to give you here, it's already 9:30, I'm trying to give you a scope. There's a Mishnah, there's a Gemara, The Gemara is to ask questions on the Mishnah, all kinds of questions. Rashi asks a question on the Mishnah, and understanding how we conduct ourselves. That we say the Shema, we say Daven and Shul Shema earlier. So he answers, no, the main thing is the Kriyash Shalamita. Then Tosfos on the other side says, hold on, how could that be the main Shema? There's so many problems with saying that the early Shema is the Shema. It's only one paragraph, no blessings. And the Shema in the evening is only for the bad spirits. So he goes through the whole thing, and then Tosfos says, no. The first Shema is the real Shema. And then comes the Shulchan Aruch who says what the right thing is. Anyways, we're not going to go into that, but this is this. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a scope of a page of what goes on a page of the Talmud. A little feel for it. It's very, very little, and this is considered an easier piece of Gemara. So this is considered an easier piece of Gemara. It's not like Baba Matziyah, Baba Kama, Baba Maser. Over there, it's like really very, very. Huh? Laws, right? Okay, this is laws too. I just thought it's right at the beginning, so we'll give it. So we're going to do 2 more samples of different kinds of pieces of the Talmud. Next week, another sample, and the week after, another sample. So by the time we finish, you'll have a big picture of the entire Mishnah and Gemara, and you could say that you're a scholar of Talmud. Okay, anyone have any questions?
No.
Thank you so much.
Any questions over here? You guys are good?
Here's Esther.
Yeah, no.
Esther, you have a question?
No, okay.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Esther. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Very interesting.
We'll see you back next week, same time. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.